ABC News. At least one explosion happening at Central Station in Brussels. Reports of also a suspect who has been shot by the military. An official confirming one suspect has been shot. Police are right now trying to figure out if that suspect was carrying something, potentially had a suicide vest. All of that yet to be determined as police are on the scene right now. ABC News consultant Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, the initial information you're hearing, we've been hearing from witnesses. What is this looking like to you at this point?
Well, it's perplexing because we still haven't received any word on victims or fatalities. So you tend to wonder, with the explosive that went off and the shooting of a suspect, what about the people around that situation? Were there people around? I mean, what happened? There's always the potential that somebody in the public was nearby that saw this individual, alerted a law enforcement officer or security official, and then they took action. And maybe that preserved fatalities and other victims. So we'll have to see what's happening. That's my first question that I've got right now, is that we haven't heard anything about victims on the ground, people that have died, which is a good thing. So now the question is, what happened when that explosive device went off?
Yeah, no reports of anybody killed at this point. Still very early on. If you remember back to the Manchester bombings only a couple of weeks ago, that one took quite some time for us to learn of the enormity of that situation before we understood how many victims there were there. Here it's still early, but no known victims at this point. We just got an update from Belgium's crisis center tweeting that soldiers had to neutralize an individual at Brussels Central Station. The situation is under control right now. Several Belgian officials have been telling ABC News that suspect was wearing what appeared to be an explosive belt, but they've yet to confirm if it's fake or it's real. They are trying to determine that right now as we speak. No reports of anybody killed. They don't know the exact nature of that device. The bomb squad moving in now. Moments ago, I spoke to a man named Arash who was in Brussels. He had been evacuated from the train station. He didn't hear the explosion, didn't hear the gunshots, but then had to go and shelter in place in a restaurant, was being led out, and said everybody seemed relatively calm. Steve, the word neutralize could mean different things to different jurisdictions, different countries. Typically means they probably shot and killed that suspect, it would seem, right?
Yeah, I think that they basically are saying that that person is no longer a threat to anybody, whether they have been shot and killed, whether they have been shot, they're still alive, they've got cuffs on their arms, and they're basically not a threat. It basically means that person is no longer a threat to anybody, which is a good thing. Now, whether that person is dead or alive, that is helpful for the investigation, because if they are alive, then there's the potential you can interview that person and try to get some additional information out of them besides what they're going to do as far as the investigation on them individually and their background.
Important points. Likely taken down, but could be alive, could be dead. We just don't know at this point as we try to piece together the puzzle pieces that are coming in of what this is shaping up to be. That we do know from the crisis center in Brussels that the suspect has been, as they put it, neutralized at Brussels Central Station. Witnesses saying that they heard at least one explosion, possibly more. Some say they heard more. Shots fired after that. It would seem those shots were likely military, as we understand from a source, hitting the suspect in this case, who apparently had some kind of belt or vest on their body, and right now trying to figure out if that was an authentic explosive device or something else. You can hear behind me the streets of Brussels right now, relatively calm, and that's what we're seeing as well. Pictures coming in showing us members of the military, long guns across their chests. They are standing, it appears, ready to respond to anything that they would need to. They've got ballistic helmets on. They're wearing their camouflage. They've got body armor on as well behind them. Police are protecting the streets. They've got roadblocks up. Police turning anybody away, trying to come up and go into the secure area right now. Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, the reports that we've been hearing, some people saying multiple explosions, police saying one explosion. It would be pretty common, wouldn't it, to get all different accounts of what people heard?
Yes, there's always going to be a lot of confusion. the people that are reporting 2 explosions, they may have heard 2, but it may just be 1, and then there's just other noise that's going to occur after the first explosion. I mean, you can imagine, as we saw with Manchester, there's people running everywhere, and things are probably falling down. So they may have heard a second explosion. If the police are saying 1 explosion at this point, I would almost believe that it is 1 explosion, and they'll clarify that later on. But there is definitely going to be confusion at this early stage of the investigation, and that's part of what the police are trying to do, is gather up all that information, corroborate it, and then try to figure out what truly happened in the situation there.
Central Station is shut down right now as police begin the investigation, begin trying to figure out what did happen, make sure that if this was some kind of an attack, that there are no more attackers who could try to carry anything out. Police looking at one police officer, vest on, long gun across his chest, walking around, seems to be checking areas, making sure that there is no threat. And quite a few police officers have the streets around Brussels shut down. ABC's Brad Milkey watching the information come in along with me here. And Brad, what do you have?
Well, we do know that, of course, that still one suspect who was shot and no fatalities in this incident, Alex, which is important to note. And that while the suspect, there's been debate over whether he might have been wearing any sort of canisters or any other explosives. We have yet to hear any confirmation of that. Also interesting to note, Alex, you just mentioned the lone cop walking through the streets of Brussels there that you just saw. And you can see on the streets there in central Brussels bars and restaurants that imaginably at one point this afternoon, this evening, were full, now completely empty as police continue to sort of secure this area. However, just as that eyewitness that you spoke to said that he was being led out, he was being sent away from that area now that everyone knew things were safe, we have seen civilians, tourists, locals being led past police barriers now, seemingly on their way just to find another way home, since, of course, the metro system right now, at least in that area, on complete lockdown.
The witness we talked to, Brad, a short time ago, you were talking about how busy the streets seemed to be. He said exactly that. There were families out, that it was 9 o'clock in the evening, that the streets were very busy as people were walking around. Central Station is a busy location. Folks heading home from the bars, heading home from going out to dinner, and then there was this explosion in the evening at around 9 o'clock. It's after 10 o'clock now at night in Brussels as the sun is setting in the streets, around the streets of Brussels as we speak. ABC's Aaron Katersky covered the 2016 Brussels bombing and what you know and the time you spent there in Brussels, Aaron, that this is a city that at least now appears to know how to respond to an incident like this. They quickly ramped up armed military, armed police, shutting down that area.
And that's been the posture there for more than a year now. And this looks like, or at least the presumption is going to be, that this was some kind of an attempted attack that just didn't work. But they are going to get some important clues out of it, Alex, especially if there really was a confirmed explosion. They'll be able to piece together the fragments, and experts will be able to go through them and see where this was built, how it was built, what the nature of the device might have been, and that's almost as important as neutralizing the suspect itself, because it'll give them a sense of what they're looking at. In the case of the attacks that targeted the airport and the subways from more than a year ago, you remember that surveillance video of the guy in the hat that everybody was looking for, and that they eventually captured. There was a small cell inspired by ISIS, it's thought, and that's what they'll try to look for here. But this is part of an emerging pattern across Europe. We've seen recently in Paris, in London, and now potentially in Brussels. These don't have to necessarily be directed attacks. They could be inspired attacks. They could just be attempts. The results are the same, though, in bringing major world capitals to a standstill, at least temporarily.
We're getting some new information here right now, Aaron, and just giving some initial details. We've got two sources telling ABC News that one terrorist, as they put it, is dead, that a second terrorist inside Central Station wearing an explosive belt, they believe at this point, no hostages, and it's unclear what the fate of that second suspect is inside Central Station. They don't know if it's a real explosive belt. They don't know, aren't clarifying if he's dead or alive, but this coming from intelligence source and counterterrorism sources as we begin to try to piece all this together. Steve Gomez, formerly of the FBI, now an ABC News consultant. If there are, in fact, two different suspects, what does that tell you now?
Well, the plot thickens is what that tells me. Two people, for all we know, there's even more. Whether there were more at the scene in the attack itself that were involved in committing the attack, or definitely others that assisted these two individuals through training, materials, financial support, what have you. Once you have more than one, then you start getting into the sophisticated attack arena. And with that comes a lot of support from a network, a cell. And as we've seen in London and Manchester and in Paris, that's usually the playbook straight out of ISIS.
Police aren't confirming a whole lot except to say that the situation is secure right now, that they've got the area surrounded, that they do believe it is secure. A bomb squad, we believe, is going in right now to try to figure out what is that device. Is it authentic? Is it a fake device of some kind? Witnesses reported hearing up to multiple explosions. Police only saying one explosion, and then shots were fired and a suspect was neutralized. There is the potential now that there was more than one suspect, even though police have been saying there's only one that they can confirm. ABC's Brad Milkey joining me. And Brad, we've been seeing a lot of social media coming in of the incident and the moments after the incident. What are you seeing?
Well, that's right. Several photos and videos of people outside and around the train station. We see security presences pushing people back several blocks away from the Central Square. However, we've also seen, Alex, one photo taken from inside Central Station, and we spoke briefly to this person to confirm that he took it. It's a photo inside the train station, flames coming from the ground, and what appears to be some sort of figure down there on the ground near that sort of ball of fire. One person going by, his head turned towards those flames. And this is the photo, Alex, that I've seen circulating around the internet. This seems to be one of the clearest photos we have of whatever the aftermath might have been to this single explosion, whether it's that single explosion or perhaps there were more. But a rather dramatic scene with these flames in the middle of the Central Station there in Brussels, just a mile away from the train station that was bombed just a year ago.
And we wait to find out more from police in Brussels, waiting to figure out exactly what has been going on, what is happening right now. A few moments ago, I talked to Arash. He is in the streets of Brussels right now, and before that was holed up, sheltering in place inside of a restaurant. And I asked him, Arash, how you doing?
We were just entering into the station to catch our train as we were sent out by a security officer. Loudly, we saw people running in the streets on the station square, decided to seek some refuge of our own, didn't know what the situation was, couldn't really assess it. From what we could see, apparently there have been explosions. Seen a lot of police and military rushing onto the station square. Situation seems to be contained now. We saw an explosive, what you call one of these vans, that get rid of explosive dismantling units. They seem to be gone also. So the situation seems to be contained. No signs of panic right now. No distress also on the station square.
Arash, as you were going into Central Station, did you hear any popping noises, any explosions yourself, or did you see police shutting it down and at that point you didn't know why?
No, we arrived at the station probably seconds after the explosion. So the thing that we saw was people running out of the station. Yeah. And right now we're being escorted out of the restaurant that we were sheltered into. So right now we're actually allowed to go outside again.
So you're being escorted out right now. What has it been like in that restaurant where you were sheltering in place? Were people scared? What were they saying?
Sorry, I'm hearing. So I was told to put my phone back into my pocket. So, excuse me, what's the question you were asking?
Sure, not a problem. We completely understand. I was saying, as you were sheltering in place in the restaurant, as you were in the restaurant, were folks scared? What were they saying? What were they doing?
Try it this way. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah, and we understand that you're leaving that restaurant right now. You're being escorted out. Police are giving you lots of commands. Can you still talk to us, Arash?
Yes, I can. We're walking the streets right now. There's a corridor of police escorting us out. So we're walking. We're being walked away from the station square.
So tell us, as you were in the restaurant, what happened while you were sheltering in place? Were there families with you? Were they worried? What were folks saying?
Families, individuals. No signs of panic, really. I have to assure you. It all seemed pretty contained all the way.
That's Arash. We spoke to him a few moments ago on the streets of Belgium there, and we can now confirm, according to two Belgian officials, that the first suspect is dead, according to Belgian officials. There is a second suspect in the station right now. We're told in a standoff with police. They don't know if he's wearing an explosive belt. They're holding off on moving in because they don't know what he's got. He is not believed to have any hostages. It's believed that second suspect is alone inside the train station. The first suspect dead. Back to ABC News consultant, formerly of the FBI, Steve Gomez. So, Steve, now that that's been clarified a bit, what is this telling you? First suspect dead, second suspect maybe holed up and potentially alive inside the train station.
Well, Alex, this gets right back to my original point about a half an hour ago, where it was said that everything was under control, and it's not under control. That was a very premature announcement. I don't like criticizing any law enforcement agency, government agency, but when you're talking about a potential terrorist attack, you don't want to be claiming that it is under control until it really is under control. And now they're dealing with a second suspect. Who knows what that suspect is armed with and what that person's capabilities are. So, again, they now need to ensure that there's nobody coming near this situation, and they've got to lock it down the way it has to be locked down, and they got to make sure they're communicating with the public properly. And now they got to deal with this situation here, in addition to conducting a very complex investigation from what it looks like.
It does look like it's going to go down that road, and that this is going to be something that's going to go on for a long time. The first suspect being dead, obviously not going to be helpful for information, but how important, Steve, is it for them to keep that second suspect alive so that they can hopefully get some information?
Well, right now I'm sure that they've got a hostage negotiator that is in place attempting to talk to this person, whether it's by phone, by speaker, loudspeaker, or whether it is in person, and they're fairly close. I'm sure the bomb squad that's been deployed there have a number of devices, shields, and so on that they are using to ensure that if that person has an explosive device and it goes off, that law enforcement is going to be protected. But right now, as far as where that suspect is, they want to contain that situation right there. Make sure there is nobody in the vicinity. If there are hostages, then you have the hostage negotiator discuss with that person, trying to get them to come to their senses, so to speak. And at the same time, they're probably considering the tactical deployment of snipers and other tactical teams that may have to take out that suspect depending on what is occurring at that time.
Tactically, is there negotiating with somebody who is dead set on if this is a real explosive device on blowing themselves and blowing up other people, or can you really talk somebody down from that?
No, but you could buy time. You could buy time for this situation, and the speed of the investigation is going to be critical while that second suspect is basically in a lockdown state, because as long as that second person is still alive and is who knows what he's trying to do with law enforcement, you want to try to figure out who that second suspect is. And if you can, then you want to try to figure out where their family members are or associates. There could be a family member somewhere that is a reasonable person that then they could bring that person down there and try to have that person assist in talking that person out or getting them to basically give up and to realize that they are taking a futile step with what they're doing in that situation.
on scene right now. Things are very fluid. We understand police are searching the rest of the train station right now to figure out exactly what this is. As they try to figure it out themselves, just as we are here right now. That all of this unfolding in the last hour and a half or so, when there were reports that came in of an explosion, possibly explosions inside Central Station in Brussels, a main hub of transportation in Brussels. Police right now have the station surrounded. There are police in tactical gear. They've got long guns across their chest, military as well, who are protecting the area. Otherwise, as you can hear behind me, where it's 10:20 at night in Brussels, that it's relatively quiet in the streets. We're seeing traffic that's making its way around the city. They come up to the roadblock and they decide to either do a U-turn or take a left to go the other way, but there isn't a lot of honking or people trying to get through that area. ABC's Brad Milkey has been watching this all come in as well. And Brad, what are you seeing now?
And day has turned to night here, Alex. Earlier, when this explosion happened, it's about 9 o'clock there in Brussels. The sun's setting quite late. Now the sun has set, and it's getting very dark there. The streets still very clear. However, you do see some traffic moving through, which makes you think that police and military there, at least several blocks away, have some sense that the larger area there in central Brussels is secure. Of course, nobody being allowed near the train station right now, where they continue to say, police do, that no civilians have been harmed, either killed or injured, according to police spokesman so far. But you do see those police members wearing white shirts and black vests, and you also see members of the Belgian military there in camouflage gear with long guns and helmets intact.
And you're right on describing those streets there, Brad, that we see people walking up, asking questions of the members of the military, of the police, and the police are in a stature where they put their gun down and walk over and talk to them. Doesn't seem like they're at that heightened state of alert that early on they might have been, telling people to get back and making sure that area was ultra secure. ABC's Steve Gomez, our ABC News consultant, was with the FBI. And Steve, the way they've got this cordoned off right now, it seems like in the outer perimeter, they've got armed military, and they're in their camouflage, bulletproof vests, tactical helmets, and then behind them, the police perimeter, and they're doing what they need to do, manning roadblocks and whatnot. Is there a reason to put the military out there in front in their camouflage with that look of that they're ready if something were to happen?
Yes, they want to make sure that this area is completely secure. They don't need a two-front war, as you would say, because right now they're dealing with the war that's occurring involving the second suspect and whatever that suspect has with him as far as weaponry, explosives, and so on. They are focused on that right now, and they don't need another situation someplace else that can create even more chaos for them. So they're smart in handling it this way. You want to make sure that nobody's coming near the area. It's locked down. It sounds like they've done a good job in clearing the crime scene and getting the public away. But now they got to deal with that situation inside, and that's also what they're doing. They want to make sure that they have all of the area and space that they need to deal with that individual for whatever type of tactical response they are going to put together.
And that's what they're doing right now. The situation, information has been changing constantly inside, very, very fluid as we try to lock down what this is. And police have yet to put out any concrete information on what they're doing or what has happened inside, except to confirm that there was an explosion and that a suspect has been neutralized, as they put it. And as they deal with that suspect or suspects right now, as it is 10:24 at night in Brussels, the street, Steve, you talk about trying to prevent any other sort of attack. The show of force that they put in those streets, based on what they've seen in recent weeks and months in Europe, a second attack has to be a concern for them, and it may be in a different part of the city.
Absolutely, and they probably have alerts that are going all throughout Belgium, not just Brussels, but throughout the whole country. And the nearby countries are going to be doing the same thing because they all recognize that this is a problem that they all have. I mean, Amsterdam just had a situation within the last week or two. And of course France and the UK. I mean, Germany, same thing. They're all having these kinds of situations, these types of attacks of varying types and varying degrees. So the alert and the notification and information sharing is going to be moving seamlessly all throughout all the different European countries, because they're going to be prepared for what could be a secondary attack, whether it's in Belgium or in another nearby country.
They are at that heightened alert right now in the streets of Brussels. Police have the area cordoned off. Members of the military, they are standing, guarding the area as well as traffic, as Brad mentioned. Traffic is making its way through. A taxi passing by right now. The roadblock that has been set up. Folks can't get toward Central Station. Central Station, main transportation hub on a normal night. This is not a normal night in Brussels. Police confirming that there was an explosion that happened, that there is one suspect that has been shot, possibly killed by the military. The train station has been evacuated. There are the fear of additional explosives, possibly some kind of device that could be inside the train station that the bomb squad is going in to try to figure out what it is, and does it need to be detonated itself to make the area safe. No reports, and we are now quite a ways into this, about an hour and a half since it happened. We've been talking to you for an hour or so, and no reports of anybody, any victims that have been killed or injured. We talked to Arash a short time ago he was taking shelter inside a restaurant. Arash saying that he didn't see anybody coming out injured. He didn't see ambulances going away with the injured in them, that there was no indication that there were any victims who were killed or injured in this attack. ABC's Aaron Katersky covered the 2016 terror attacks in Brussels. He spent quite some time in that city, and tonight we have to expect that this is not a normal night for many folks in Brussels as they now deal with another terror attack, Aaron.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to be. And then, Alex, we knew right away the scope and magnitude of the attacks in Brussels. Multiple targets involving airports and subways, a coordinated attack by a cell that had a number of members, and raids that are still going on. Here may or may not be that. And it almost doesn't matter anymore. Just the inspiration. At least that we know of yet in the way of any victims, but still enough to shut down a major rail hub in Europe. And it's been a pattern that's been repeated in the last couple of days now, where these soft targets have come in for apparent attack in Brussels, Paris, London. And this has been the result, it's thought, of increased pressure perhaps on ISIS and a use of social media or video or some other way to signal to attackers that it may be time. And they posted explosive building instructions online. They posted suggested methods for attack that we've been following and well know the scripts by now, given the pace. But it's the pace that I think is quite concerning here, coming almost weekly now in major European capitals.
ABC's Aaron Katersky. Aaron, thank you very much. And as we listen in on the streets of Brussels, you can hear how quiet it is right now as the cars are making their way through. Things have definitely calmed down compared to what we saw early on, where police were at a heightened stature. They had guns across their chests. In some cases, they still do, but they weren't allowing folks into any of the general area. Now we're beginning to see in the streets around Central Station, while they're still shut down, cars are being allowed to go down side streets, are being allowed to go around. The soldiers who are in the streets, they're beginning to have a little bit more of a relaxed stance as they're talking to folks. It looks like that immediacy is beginning to calm a bit. What we know